Good morning, Collision, and anyone else watching this. It's Sunday, April 19th. God has a message for you this morning, especially for those of you that have children, grandchildren. Again, I want to thank those of you that keep giving so generously. Last week, you gave $905 to support the ministry of Prakash in India. Hopefully this put a smile back on his face. Good morning, Teresa, Liz, Mike Jones and his family, Ariana. Speaking of Ariana and Sierra, they just sent a message that Jackie is doing well. She has lung cancer, and now she's got the coronavirus. She's a fighter. Dorothy, Cheryl, thank you for watching this. It was awesome to see a picture of Prakash bringing food to the lepers that were locked in. It's like bringing food to the homeless, which is what Dandy's doing. So let me just talk just a little bit about Dandy. Dandy has spent his life taking care of the homeless in Hawaiian Gardens, knows most of them by name. He worked and used most of his paycheck, and that's when we found out what he was doing, so we started supporting him. Well, we didn't know, but for the last month, Dandy's been without work, no income coming in, no unemployment, no stimulus check. So he's using what little bit of money we have. He is still out there. I'm still seeing pictures of him out there with feeding the homeless, along with Grace and Irene. So we want to support him. So this morning we're going to be taking a special offering for Dandy. I hope that you were willing to give so he can continue to do his ministry. You can go online on the Collision Facebook page, and you can give online. You can give your prayers online. You can do your praise reports online, etc. I want to start with this. I saw this on social media where the devil tells Jesus, look, Jesus, I took your churches away from you. And Jesus says to the devil, no, I took the churches and put them in each home. And then the devil said, well, I took your prayers out of your schools. And Jesus said, no, I put the prayer back in the homes because school is in the homes. But have you? You know, so many people have been complaining about they took prayer out of the school when all schools are in the home. I wonder if prayer has been brought back into the schools in your homes. Let me open with a prayer. Father, I pray that you speak to your people this morning. God, I pray that you teach them, that you train them, that you convict them, that you challenge them, that you do everything that your word has the power to do. God, we're going to be looking at a lot of scripture this morning. I pray, God, you use your word, use my words. Hopefully you've given me your words, and maybe even you'll continue to give me your words through this message. But we want to hear from you, Jesus. Amen. We're in the book of 2 Timothy. We went through 1 Timothy, now we're going through 2 Timothy. Now remember, Timothy is a book that Paul wrote to Timothy because he was leading a church. And so this is a good book for us to study as a church. And it's interesting because he talks much in both books about parenting. Well, it's obvious young Timothy was not married, didn't have children. So he's telling this to Timothy so Timothy can tell the church. So that's my duty now, to tell the church. You are the church. My duty is to tell the church. Now, I know some of you have heard this before, but if God says it more than once, then we need to listen more than once. So let's hear what it has to say here in 2 Timothy. I'm going to read chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. It says, I thank God whom I serve as my forefathers did, with a clear conscience, as night and day I constantly remember you in my prayers. Paul telling Timothy. Recalling your tears, I long to see you so that I may be filled with joy. I have been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. Interesting that Paul, he tells Timothy that his faith came from his mom, his grandmother, and most likely did not mention his great-grandmother, because it seems like things are passed on to generations. We know this is true for sin. I'm going to read from Exodus here to show you that what God talks about, how sin is passed down. So let me read this now in Exodus chapter 20. I'm going to read verses 5 and 6. It says, "You shall not bow down to false gods or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of their parents to the third and fourth generation." Wow. To the third and fourth generation. Then I'm going to go over to chapter 34 of Exodus. And he says something similar here again, now verses 6 and 7. It says this. It says, "As he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate, the gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of their parents to the third and fourth generations." Wow. Wow. Now, let me just give you some examples. Disease. Disease is passed on to generations. I know in my family, we have a background of cancer. My dad died of cancer. My mom has had cancer several times. All my dad's siblings died of cancer. My mom's siblings died of cancer. The grandparents died of cancer. My two older brothers have had cancer. It's passed down. Poverty is, well, there's other diseases passed down. Heart, diabetes. Poverty is passed down due to laziness. Lazy parents raise lazy children, have lazy grandchildren. Captivity, addictions passed down. Alcohol, drinking, smoking, drugs, all passed down to generations. Influences of bad examples passed down. Cursing. If your parents curse, there's a chance you're going to curse. Lying, stealing, anger, etc. But the opposite is also true. The opposite is also true, as we learned here in 2 Timothy, that faith is passed down through generations. As he promised, as he says here in 2 Timothy, faith is passed down through. Look at 2 Timothy. I'm going to go ahead to 2 Timothy 3:15, where he says this, "And how from infancy you have known the holy scriptures, which are able to make you wise." From infancy. So think of this now. Timothy, there's a reason why God picked Timothy to lead this church at a young age, very young age. They figure he might even been a teen, because he was wise and he was strong in his faith. Why? Because from infancy, his mother, his parents, and his grandparents raised them up in the ways of the Lord. It was passed down through generations. Well, in Proverbs 22:6, it says, "Train your child in the ways of the Lord, and when they grow older, they will not stray far from it." You hear that? Train them in the ways of the Lord, and then when they get older, they won't stray far from it. So I'm sure that those of you that are strong in your faith, and I'm looking at the people that are watching this, I'm certain that you had parents and grandparents that were strong in their faith. And that's why you're strong in your faith. I know that's the case with me. That's the case with me. My faith is strong because of my parents' faith. Now, we were raised Catholic, but I don't ever remember missing church on a Sunday. I just don't remember it. And that was passed on to me when I went to the military. Even though I didn't have a relationship with the Lord yet, I was still godly. And even when I was in the military for 2 years, I would go to church every Sunday. None of the other soldiers were going. I can remember one time on KP, I got KP, and I told the sergeant in KP that that I needed to take off a couple hours to go to church, and he thought I was lying. And then one of the other soldiers there said, no, he goes every Sunday. So they allowed me to go to church. And I didn't even have a relationship with God. I was trained as a child to do that. And I remember my parents going to a crusade, and they said the family that prays together stays together. So we started praying the rosary every single night. Never missed. We would go to visit family, and on the way home we would pray it in the car even. It was just something that we did. It was how I was brought up in the ways of the Lord. Now, God has some things to tell you parents now, and I know a lot of you are familiar with this, but I'm going to share it with you again anyway now. In Ephesians 6:4, it says, parents, do not exasperate, frustrate your children. It says, instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. You hear that? Don't frustrate. Don't get them to discouraged to where they don't respect you anymore. Because ahead of that, God is telling your children that they are to obey you. They are to respect you, to honor you. But if you frustrate them, it's going to be hard for them to be able to do that. But it says, instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. If you do that, then your children will honor you and respect you. But you have to do your part first. You have to train them in the instruction of the Lord. And it goes on right over in a few books over in Colossians 3:21. It says this in 3:21. Parents, do not embitter your children, or they will become enraged. Don't embitter them. Don't cause them to get angry or resentful. So let me ask you, parents, which one are you doing more? Are you frustrating your children and getting them angry, or are you bringing them up in the training of the Lord? Whew. Wow, good question for you people. God put prayer back in the schools by putting it in the homes. Are you using it? Are you using it? Deuteronomy. You're all familiar with this. Many of you are familiar with this, but let me read it to you again. Deuteronomy 6:6-9. God says, these commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on your doorposts of the houses of your gates. Listen. Talk about, impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you go to bed, and when you get up in the morning. It's not just once. It's like God telling us constantly be doing that with your children. Constantly be training them in the ways of the Lord. Psalms 127:3 says that your children are a reward from God. They're a blessing from God. It's kind of, sure, you had the children, moms, you had the children, dads, you were part of it all, but God is saying, but they're a reward from God. It's like God loaning them to you and expecting you to raise them in the ways of the Lord. What kind of a job are you doing? Now, it doesn't end when your parents, I found that out. It doesn't end when your parents grow up and leave the home, because you're going to have grandchildren. And grandchildren love grandparents. They love grandparents. Sometimes they listen to grandparents more than they do their own parents because they're around their parents all the time. So we make a huge impression on our grandchildren. When they come to our house once in a while, they're seeing, we're modeling to them what a Christian is supposed to look like. And I've shared this with you, bro. I've been challenged by my granddaughters different times where I'll say something, they'll say, "Ooh, Grandpa, that wasn't very nice." And then I have to apologize because I made a mistake. and they're calling me on it. So grandparents, you have an incredible role to play. Not just the parents, of course, but the grandparents also. Proverbs tells us to discipline them, to discipline in the ways of the Lord. It says if you love your child, you will discipline them. I'm going to read from Hebrews because it gives a better understanding of this. In Hebrews 12:7-9, it says this. It says, endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. So we're all going through hardship right now. Every one of us is going through a hardship. Even if you still got work, it's a hardship because you're taking a chance. You're going out there where the virus is. You can't even stay at home. So we're all going through hardships. It says God is treating you as his children. For what child is not disciplined by their parents? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, but if you're not, then you're illegitimate children, not true children. Moreover, we have all had human parents who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. They disciplined us, and we respected them for it. Your children will respect you more if you discipline them than if you don't discipline them. Now this is something that's really interesting here now, again, in 1 Timothy. I'm going to go back to 1 Timothy in chapter 5, verse 8. Where it says, if anyone does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their immediate family, they have denied the faith and are worse than an unbeliever. You hear that? If you don't take care of your children, you are worse than an unbeliever. Wow. Now, taking care of your children, it's not just with material things. As Christians, taking care of our children, as Christians, there's an incredible responsibility, as we've learned, to train them in the ways of the Lord. Now, again, I've told you this before, but I see this as working with your children. I see things, okay? I see things. When I ask for prayer and hands go up immediately, I know without a shadow of a doubt that they're learning that from praying in the home. So when I ask for prayer and Aiden and Abby's hands immediately go up, when Harrison and Isla's hands immediately go up, when Manny's hands go up, when Sammy's hands go up, that's telling me that they are praying in their homes, or they wouldn't be so comfortable praying out loud. If kids are reluctant to pray out loud, it's because it's not being modeled to them. It's not being modeled to them. Because if it was modeled to them, they would feel free to pray. Now, I don't want to boast about my grandchildren, but Yasmin goes to church, is prayed for with her parents, and she has no problem praying. No problem praying, as do my other grandchildren, because they were raised learning how to pray. Wow. And then 2 Corinthians 12 tells us this. 12:14 tells us this. And now I am ready to visit you for a third time, and I will not be a burden to you, because what I want is not your possessions, but you. After all, children should not have to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. Again, God is saying, we need to be taking care of our children. We need to be saving money so they can get an education, so they can go to college. We need to be our children are our duty. That's our duty. I'm seeing Cheryl right now, and Cheryl, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. You know how much money it's cost you to send in Amanda to. By the way, Amanda's going out. She wants to get into ministry, and she's been going to Bible colleges and is applied again. But it's costing money. But God is saying that's what parents do. That's especially when they want to get into ministry like that. Wow, you do everything you can to help them. Now, for you youth and children that may be watching this with your parents, God wants to speak to you too. Proverbs 8:9 says to listen to your parents. In Ephesians, we just read in Ephesians where God says that if you obey your parents, it comes with two promises. Now, if you children were alive right now, I know many of you would know what those two promises are. That life would go well with you and that you would have a long life. That's promises. So parents, if you can train your children in the ways of the Lord, then they will honor you. They will obey you. And as a result of that, God promises them that they will have a good life and a long life. So you have the ability to give that to them. You have the ability to give them a good life and a long life. Have you ever thought about that? You have that ability just by training them in the ways of the Lord. So parents, can you say what Paul says many times? Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Can you say that? Oh, I hope you can. I hope you can say that. Remember what you just learned, that who you are is going to be passed down to your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren unless God comes before to take us up. It's going to be passed down to generations. So your bad influences will be passed down, but so will your faith be passed down. But either way, you're going to pass something down. You can't just say, not my responsibility. It doesn't make any difference what you think. It's going to happen automatically. It's going to happen. So let me just give you some examples now, okay? In closing. Dave Sloan has passed down to his girls the importance of a college education. And he's passed down the importance of tithing to the church. Now, I'm letting things out of the bag here, but Sammy is the only young adult in our church that is giving to the church. Why? Because she's learned that from her parents, and I'll guarantee you, Dave and Claudia learned that from their parents and then from the grandparents. It was passed down. Grace is passed down to her boys, Manny and Ray. Compassion for the poor and the homeless. They go with her when they bring food and clothing, when she goes to Mexico to bring food and clothing. They go with her when they feed the homeless with Dandy. Teresa, Serena, Sammy, Destiny, Anthony, passed down to the children of you parents. The importance of volunteering to help the less fortunate. Every time we go to volunteer at the thrift store for unwed mothers, they are always there. So your children see that. They're modeling that to your children. They're a huge help to you. Dawn and Jamie, Dandy, and again, Grace and Irene passed down to their kids compassion for feeding the homeless and the poor. They're an inspiration to me. They're an inspiration to me. When I just saw on Facebook the other day a picture of Dandy and Grace and Irene with their masks on out there feeding the homeless. I look at that and I go, wow. Are they living their faith? Or what an incredible testimony they are. What an incredible testimony. That's why people watching this, we need to support Dandy. When I see Prakash and his wife giving food to the lepers, it's bad enough just being with the lepers, but with the coronavirus, and they got their masks on and everything, and they're bringing food to and I shared with you before, Prakash's head was down and there was no smile on his face. And hopefully now with the $900 some you're able to give him and put a smile back on his face. Our generosity does that. And when you do that, you're teaching your children and your grandchildren that. Oh, so important. So important. Let me go on. Mike and Debbie, you have passed down to your boys a love for the word and how to study the scriptures deeply. We on Monday nights now, tomorrow night, I'm going to have at 7 o'clock a question and answer period. And Mike Jones asked a tough question on there, and I answered part of it, but I didn't answer the other part because I knew that it was like too deep for the people that were watching. He wanted to know what I thought about the millennium, whether I was pre-millennium, post-millennium, or all millennium, and I thought, how does he even know that? I mean, I studied that for years. How did he know that? Because he studies the scriptures deeply. Veronica has passed down to her girls, to Liz and Julissa, the importance of studying hard. Both those girls are in the GATE program, and Veronica's going to school at night. Alicia's passed down to her children work ethic, willing to hold down 2 jobs just to put food on their table. She's passing that down to her children. I could go on and on. What are you passing down to your children and grandchildren? I hope it's not addictions, laziness, partying, arguing and fighting, abuse, both physical, mental, and emotional. I hope it's not those things. I hope you're passing down to your children the ways of the Lord. God has given you incredible opportunity to do this now. Why? Because you're with your children 24/7 now. 24, I see this all the time now where Tisha and Billy goes off to work, but Tisha is with them 24/7. She's having to school them, she's having to feed them, she's having to do everything, and now now they're required to train them in the ways of the Lord. I heard so many people complain about how dare them take prayer out of the school. They need to put prayer back into school. Well, God said, I'm giving you every opportunity. Are you doing it? Are you doing it? Are you praying with your family? Boy, this is convicting to me too. This is just as convicting to me as it is to you. So, with that being said, before I do my closing prayer, I want to share with you what's going to happen now. It's kind of exciting. OJ and Sheila are going to follow this message immediately with a worship song they put together. Extremely creative, those two. Now it's going to be on their Facebook page. So it's called Man and Wife is what their group is called now. But immediately after that, after this message, after I do my closing prayer, they're going to come on with a song, with a worship song. And then at 11 o'clock, Dandy is going to be on my face page doing the children's message. Wow. Now, I have not gotten the views on children's message. And then I'm watching on YouTube and places the children's messages that are extremely creative, and I'm thinking, wow, because my daughter's honest with me, and she says, I'm able to hold the attention of Josephine, who's 4th grade, but the other ones at 2nd grade and 4 years old, I'm not holding their attention. I have a feeling Dandy's going to do that. So tune in at 11 with that. And then if you'd like to give towards the ministry of, I want you to know that because of your generosity, we have been able to help families now in the church that are in big, dire need. We've been able to help them. I was able to help someone again. I let them know, and I put the check in the mailbox, and they come by and get it so we can keep our distance. But we're able to help them because of your generosity. Now we need to help Dandy now. Dandy is continuing to go out on the streets, putting his life in danger, just like the nurses and the doctors and the grocery store workers and the delivery people. He is putting his life in danger. They're doing it because it's their job. He's doing it because he has a passion for the homeless. He has had that passion. You have seen that now for years and years and years. So you can go on Cheryl has just put a link here on here. You look at the comments below and you'll see the link that Cheryl put down there that you can go to give your offerings online. Please consider doing that. And any prayer request, it's amazing how your prayers, let me tell you again, Jackie that has cancer, that now came down with the coronavirus. And I'll be honest with you, in my mind, Jim of Little Faith, I thought, well, that's it. That poor woman, there's no way she can fight that now. The girls just messaged me just before I came online, saying that she had a great night's sleep and she's doing better. It's like two things. That's a tough woman. And number two, your prayers are being answered. The prayers of a righteous man or woman are powerful and effective and can accomplish much. Children, I bet you're praying for them too. So with that said, let me close with a prayer. Father, thank you for your word. I know many of these people heard these verses before, but boy, we need to hear them over and over. Because if we're not doing it, then we need to hear it again. And God, I just know that your hand is on everything that's going on in the world today, and you're speaking to your people. You're speaking to us Christians. You're telling us something, God. One of the things you're telling us is you're giving us more of an ability now to raise our children in the ways of the Lord by being with them 24/7 now. They're not going off to school for half of the day. School is in homes. God, convict us to do a better job, to pray with them, to teach them, to train them, so that they can pass it to their children and to their grandchildren. So it goes on from generation to generation to generation. Thank you for hearing our prayers. Thank you for loving us. We're going to continue to love you, God. Amen. Thanks for watching. Remember, tomorrow night I'm going to have a question and answer time again on Facebook. Last Monday I thought maybe we'd go for a half hour. We ended up going for a whole hour with a lot of good questions. So get your questions ready. I'll try to answer them according to Scripture. And then I have a devotion, as you know, every morning at 8 o'clock. I was thinking of going to 9 o'clock because most of you aren't up at 8 o'clock. But I'll continue at 8 o'clock. We're going through the book of Revelation, extremely interesting. So please consider watching that. And then, of course, the Impact is on Tuesday nights, Crashes on Wednesday nights, and then the Bible study going through the book of Acts is on Thursday nights. Have a great day today with your children, and watch immediately after now for OJ and Sheila as they're coming online with their video. God bless.